Most people make a strange assumption. If someone is quiet, they must be weak. If someone doesn't talk much, they must have nothing important to say. And if someone stays silent in a room full of loud voices, they're easy to overlook. But psychology tells a very different story. In fact, some of the most powerful, influential, and even dangerous people in history were never the loudest in the room. They were the quiet ones, the ones who listened while others argued, the ones who watched while others tried to impress, the ones who noticed things everyone else missed. Because while most people are busy talking, quiet people are busy observing. They study behavior, they read emotions, they understand patterns, and that awareness gives them an advantage most people never realize, because silence isn't weakness, silence is control, silence is intelligence, and sometimes silence is the most powerful strategy of all. Today, we're going to explore the psychology behind why quiet people often hold far more power than anyone expects. In today's world, loudness is often confused with confidence. The person who talks the most in meetings is usually seen as the leader. The one who dominates conversations is assumed to be the smartest in the room. And the person who constantly shares opinions appears bold and powerful. But psychology suggests something very different. Many people talk excessively, not because they are confident, but because they feel the need to prove themselves. Real confidence doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits quietly and observes. Quiet individuals process the world differently. Instead of competing to be heard, they focus on understanding. They notice patterns in conversations. They analyze how people behave. They pay attention to reactions, tone, and subtle shifts in energy. While others are busy trying to impress everyone around them, quiet people are gathering information. And in many situations, the person who observes the most often holds the greatest advantage. One of the most underestimated strengths of quiet people is their ability to observe. When someone speaks less, it doesn't mean their mind is inactive. In fact, it's often the opposite. Their brain is constantly collecting information. Psychologists have found that people who listen more carefully tend to notice social signals others completely miss, small changes in tone, brief facial expressions that last only a second, awkward pauses between words, the subtle tension between people in a conversation. While louder personalities focus on being noticed, quiet individuals focus on understanding what's really happening. They watch how people behave when they think no one is paying attention. And that awareness becomes powerful, because once you understand how people think, what motivates them, what they fear, and what they want, you begin to see patterns. And when you can see patterns in human behavior, you can often predict what people will do next. Here's something fascinating about human behavior. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with silence. When a conversation suddenly pauses, the human brain immediately tries to fill that empty space. It creates tension, and people feel an almost automatic urge to break it. Imagine two people talking. One person finishes speaking, and the other simply stays quiet. No reaction, no interruption, just calm silence. Within seconds, the pressure begins to build. The other person starts talking again. They explain more than they planned. They reveal extra details. Sometimes they even expose information they never intended to share. This is why skilled negotiators, investigators, and powerful communicators often use something called strategic silence. Instead of reacting quickly, they pause. They stay calm. They allow the silence to work. And that quiet moment shifts the balance of the conversation. because in many situations, the person who speaks less learns the most. Another reason quiet individuals can seem intimidating is their emotional control. Most people reveal exactly what they feel. When they're upset, they react immediately. They argue, defend themselves, or raise their voices without thinking. But quiet individuals tend to operate differently. Instead of reacting instantly, they pause. They think before they speak. They process situations internally before responding externally. This creates a powerful psychological effect because when someone stays calm in tense moments, others can't easily predict how they will respond. And unpredictability commands respect. When a person doesn't overreact, doesn't argue loudly, and never seems desperate to prove a point, people start to recognize something important. This is someone who cannot be easily controlled, someone who cannot be pushed into emotional mistakes. And the moment people realize that, the entire power dynamic in the room quietly shifts. Human beings are naturally curious. When someone constantly talks about their life, their thoughts, and their opinions, there's very little left for others to discover. Everything is already out in the open. But quiet individuals operate differently. They reveal only small pieces of themselves. They keep their deeper thoughts private. Their emotions remain controlled, and their intentions are not always obvious. And that mystery naturally draws attention. People begin to wonder what the quiet person is thinking. They start observing them more closely. They try to decode their silence. In psychology, this is often called the information gap effect. When people feel like they're missing information, their brain becomes driven to fill that gap. The mind starts asking questions. And interestingly, the less a quiet person explains themselves, the more others think about them. Sometimes silence doesn't make someone invisible. Sometimes it makes them unforgettable. Many quiet people develop a powerful habit that most others rarely practice: deep thinking. Instead of reacting instantly to every situation, they slow down and mentally process what's happening. In their mind, they play out different scenarios. They imagine possible outcomes. They analyze consequences. They consider what might happen next. This creates a powerful strategic advantage. While impulsive personalities rush into decisions, quiet individuals tend to move with intention. They take their time, they observe, they prepare, and when they finally act, their choices are rarely random. They are calculated. This is why many effective leaders, strategists, and innovators throughout history were not the loudest voices in the room. They were calm, thoughtful, and reserved, because true power doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't need constant attention. Real influence often works quietly in the background, thinking several steps ahead while everyone else is focused only on the present moment. There's a powerful psychological principle that many people overlook. The more you explain yourself, the less powerful you often appear. When someone constantly justifies their actions, argues to prove their point, or desperately tries to be understood, it can signal insecurity. But quiet individuals approach things differently. They don't rush to defend every decision. They don't feel the need to explain themselves to everyone in the room. Instead, they let their actions speak for them. And something interesting happens when a person stops chasing approval. People begin to respect them more because independence signals strength. Silence becomes a boundary. It quietly communicates a powerful message. I know who I am. I don't need to convince you. That kind of calm confidence can be unsettling to those who depend on constant validation from others. Because when someone is comfortable standing in silence, It shows a level of inner certainty that many people secretly wish they had. But here's the deeper truth most people miss. Quiet people aren't dangerous because they're aggressive. They're dangerous because they're aware of human behavior, aware of subtle manipulation, aware of the emotional currents moving beneath conversations. And awareness is power. While others are busy talking, reacting, and revealing their intentions, quiet individuals are often observing everything. They notice tone changes, body language, hidden motives. This awareness makes them extremely difficult to control. You can't easily manipulate someone who sees patterns in behavior. You can't easily deceive someone who listens more than they speak. And you can't easily pressure someone who doesn't react impulsively. That combination creates a quiet form of psychological strength, because the person who understands the game doesn't need to shout to win it. They simply watch, wait, and move at the moment that matters most. And by the time others realize what happened, the quiet person is already 3 steps ahead. So the next time you meet someone who speaks very little, don't be too quick to judge them. Don't assume they have nothing to say, because sometimes silence isn't a lack of thoughts. It's the presence of deeper ones. Quiet people often choose their words carefully. They observe before they react. They listen before they speak. And most importantly, they understand something many people never learn. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every reaction needs to be shown, because silence is not weakness. Silence is patience. Silence is awareness. Silence is control. And sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who understands everyone else the most. In a world where everyone is fighting to be heard, the person who has mastered silence holds a rare kind of power. A calm, controlled, and deeply intelligent power. The kind that doesn't need noise to be felt.